So good evening, everybody. My name is Kenji Masuda. I am a teacher at McManus Elementary School, and today I'll be talking about technology in the classroom. Today, I have 4 students with me. Let's start off right over here, and let's introduce ourselves.
I'm Nahaley Mena, and I am 3rd grade.
I'm Vanessa Vernoga, and I'm in 4th grade.
I'm Jaden Parsons, I'm in 4th grade.
I'm Emily Mena, and I'm in 4th grade.
So I'm going to start off with our mission over at McManus. Our mission is creating a high-quality learning environment and culture that creates academic and emotional success for all students. So my hope through technology is to really teach kids about all these different things and different career pathways they can take in the future and just really start building a foundation for them. My personal goal for my classroom is to engage students in cross-cutting concepts through authentic learning experiences. So although we have technology here, we also write about it, we read about it, we talk. It covers a lot of the day, so it's thematic but very educational. So I chose this picture to represent my classroom. I was trying to find a perfect picture. I was thinking when I could see all my students, but this is just a snapshot when I have all of my technology in the classroom. I even have a student sitting on a chair upside down. So there's a lot going on in my classroom when I bring technology, and I'm a 3rd and 4th grade combo teacher, but we also, if you notice, there are some kids who look a little younger, and there I also have some 2nd graders visiting and checking out what we are doing. So over at McManus, we like to share with other teachers, and we like to collaborate. And we have Mrs. Linegar's 2nd grade classroom learning about Makey Makey, which you'll learn about in a little bit. But I thought this was a good portrayal of what my classroom is like. It's fun. It's high energy, but it's very engaging. So when I plan a lesson, I think about the engineering process. So I look at our science standards. When I design a lesson plan, I try to think of how can we define and figure out a problem that we can solve through engineering. And then after we define a problem, we look for solutions. And when we find those solutions, we then test and optimize whatever we are working on. The technology I get from the Butte County Office of Education. So teachers can check out this equipment for free, which is fantastic for a teacher who's on a limited budget. And most items come in class sets, so it's not just like I have one thing for all students can be engaged at the same time. The very first technology we're going to talk about is Sphero. So Nahaley over here has created something that she would like to demonstrate to you all. Make sure the volume is up. So Nahaley made a very simple code in about 2 minutes, and it's about logic and sequencing, and it's the foundation for coding. So they're not getting to the text yet where they're typing in code. However, it is figuring out, the proper sequence of things, and it gets kids engaged in something that they may not have been engaged with to begin with. So it's a very cool thing. And something about Spheros, it has many potential lessons. So it's not just about coding and programming. Nahaley, could you talk about what's going on the TV screen over here, the one with Lila?
So in the corner next to Lila, we have a little tape maze for students to come up with one code to get through the maze. Oh, thank you. To get through the maze. So if you drive it, which is one of the options on the app, then it doesn't count. But if you come up with one code and change the angles and change the seconds for each little section, then it kind of counts. So that's kind of your goal, just to get through the maze in one whole code.
And Nahaley, could you kind of talk about what we did right over here? This is something we call Battle Bots, because as a kid, I watched that show quite a bit, and I loved it. So I tried to bring a little bit over to McManus. Nahaley, could you talk about the engineering process here?
in the first picture, when you're defining it, we sketched out a design for our BattleBots. You could sketch out 4 designs and pick the one that you think would be most effective and light enough for the spheros. Once you're done making it, you test it out, as in the second picture, and if it's too heavy or it doesn't work, then you optimize it, which you change it until it works well.
Thank you to Haley.
Okay, who's on Google Expedition? Is it Jason? I think it's Jason.
So the second of the 3 technologies I brought today is Google Expedition. I was able to get a set of 30 virtual reality helmets for my students to go on virtual reality tours. We did this in December where the weather maybe not so great for going outside, but we visited quite a few places. So I have Jaden and Vanessa who would like to talk to you about it. We also have a set. If you are interested, you can try it out. It should be a video of Yosemite. So if you're interested in checking out what virtual reality is and take a little field trip that we did, you're welcome to try it on. Would anybody be interested in trying out the headset? Okay. So. Hey, Jaden.
Hold on.
Make sure it's turned on. All right, so while she's taking a gander at Yosemite, Vanessa, could you kind of talk about some of the field trips that we went on?
Some of the field trips that we went on were mostly national parks, oceans, volcanoes, and Sutter's Mill. Sutter's Mill was for the 4th graders, and we were learning Gold Rush when we did that. National parks, we went through El Capitan, and volcanoes, we went to Hawaii and learned about extinct volcanoes and active volcanoes. The oceans, we mostly learned about sea urchins and little critters and seals.
So we actually were visiting that cliffside right there. There was a moment where you can actually be on the cliffside like a rock climber, and it was really cool for the kids. And it was almost like a tennis match where I could control where they're looking at, and all of a sudden all the kids would look left, and then they would look right, and then look left again. It was really fun, and I wish I had more pictures, but I was pretty invested in this as well. And the last one I have here, I have a little video, and while that video is playing, I'm going to have my students have a live demonstration. So the sound won't be, you can't hear the sound too well, but we'll do a live demonstration up there.
Just wait a little bit, okay? Wait a little bit until they turn it on.
Let's bring the mic over. Sorry about the noise. That's my classroom during these times.
If Jaden tries to do it, it won't work. But since I have the tinfoil, it works on me. And then
What happens if you let go? Does it still work?
No.
Oh, so what's that called?
Electricity.
Electricity. What kind of circuit? Open or closed?
Close circuit.
Closed circuit, that's right. Thank you. So we were learning about different types of circuits, and if we could do a quick demonstration with what we have there. And ladies, could you turn the Chromebook so they can kind of see our musical bananas? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So we have quite a bunch of fun in our classroom. Haley, could you flip the screen around and demonstrate what's going on the computer screen so they can see the keys light up? Uh-oh. You learn with technology to be very patient. Look for those Mena sisters and being musical banana players in the future. And many of my students wanted to be here today, but we just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to see what we're doing at McManus.
Okay, I heard your teacher say, I don't know if anybody's going to ask you a question, but that was a trick. He knew we were going to ask you a question. So, with all the stuff you've learned, what could you think you might do in junior high?
Wait, ladies, do you have any idea what you would like to do in junior high when you get to choose your extracurriculars?
All right. And are you guys probably going to go to Bidwell?
That is our neighbor's school, so
Okay.
most
So
likely.
in Bidwell, you can do a DNA of yourself. In Bidwell, there's a rocket ship to the moon. Yeah. Or you could be a medical detective. You can do, well, you guys have got a great start here. I think you're going to have a really exciting future. Let's everybody give them a hand again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Kaiser and I go to the STEM conference, and we realize that a lot of these, it's wonderful to see all these girls who are participating in this, because we know that by the time they get to junior high and high school, so many of them are not interested. So you girls, keep having fun with science, and don't give it up. We need you to stay involved with this. Thank you very much for bringing your students. Thank you.
And a big thank you to Mr. Masuda. I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of extra time, but we certainly appreciate it, and we know your students do as well. Thank you. So we're going to move right on into the superintendent's report, and I would like to invite up newly appointed principal of Citrus, Shannon Payne.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, School Board, for my appointment, Chico Unified for selecting me. I'm very proud to be part of the Citrus Bobcat family. I'm proud tonight to be awarding two very special ladies at Citrus with the Superintendent's Award. I'd like to bring up Miss Amber Ochoa. So, Amber thinks she's here to talk about leveled reading. It is an honor to present Amber Ochoa with the Superintendent's Award this evening. Amber exemplifies how a parent can have a profound impact on a school, and more importantly, the students of Citrus Elementary. Amber serves Citrus Elementary in many roles. She is a parent aide, a school aide, and our parent liaison. If you asked a lot of our students, they'd probably tell you she's kind of like their mom. In each of these roles, she always puts forth her best effort. She goes above and beyond the expected work for our school. When our school needs an additional support person, she's always willing to fill in, and she takes this job with a smile, often at the very last second. One example of her dedication was very apparent to me when we moved to a school-wide reading intervention, and we required that all of our support staff be involved inside of this intervention for our students. When Amber was presented with this new program, the challenge of taking on a small group reading instruction, she never hesitated. She jumped right in, she opened herself up to this challenge, she accepted the training, she grew her skills, and has continued to run a very successful level reading group since September. Her students are growing, and she's changing the Citrus students' ability and confidence in reading. Our students and staff count on Amber for many things, and she always delivers. I'm honored to work alongside Amber and to have her as a member of our Citrus family. Congratulations, Amber. Well, Bonnie, you know what's up now. Come on up, Bonnie Whipple. Bonnie's going to be mad at me tomorrow. Thank goodness she's so forgiving. What a joy it is to give Bonnie Whipple this Superintendent's Award for teaching in the classroom. She is a first grade teacher. She's been with Citrus for a long time through many changes. I believe about 13 years? 11. We'll give her a couple because sometimes they're not easy. Her service at Citrus goes far beyond the teaching day. In many ways, she's like the heart of Citrus. Bonnie has an incredible sense of how to meet students' needs in the most dignified ways. She is compassionate, caring, and exemplifies what it takes to be a teacher in today's complicated educational needs. She reaches her students' hearts and minds with her incredible relationships that she builds with them every day. Bonnie has a phenomenal set of teaching skills and the talent, but remains the most humble teacher I think I've ever worked with. What I do see is many staff members looking to collaborate with her on how to support students due to her nurturing way of meeting with difficult student behaviors. In addition, she's a leader at Citrus and is a member of our instructional leadership team. She is a listener and a collaborator, and our staff at Citrus trust her to support their voices in decision making. The best way I can sum up what Bonnie means to Citrus is that she makes our school a better community every day she comes to work. I am very proud to have the privilege of working with Miss Bonnie Whipple.
Love the Citrus family here.
Thank you.
I don't think there's enough enthusiasm at that school.
Congratulations to both of you. Okay, so next we are moving on to item 6, and that is announcements. Does anyone from the board have any announcements? No. Announcements from the floor? All righty, we'll move on to number 7, which is items from the floor. Does anyone in the audience have something they'd like to address the board that is not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Let's move to item 8, negotiations update. Mr. Hanlon, we'll start there.
Okay, so we're meeting again with CUTA on April 24th. We are in the beginning stages of getting a tentative agreement put together, so we're trying to wrap things up for the year, and hopefully we'll have something to you before the end of the 18-19 school year. That's what we're in. CSEA, we are meeting on April 26th, so we're looking forward to negotiations with them on that day. That'll be the first time we met since September, so we're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Mr. Moretti?
All good.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. All right, so next we will move on to item 9, which is our consent calendar. Does anyone from the board wish to pull any items from the consent calendar? No? Dr. Kaiser? Okay.
I
so
move
seeing
that we pass the consent calendar.
All right. So we have a motion to approve the consent calendar by Liz Griffin, a second from Dr. Kaiser. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Griffin, aye.
Hovey, aye.
Kaiser, aye.
Very good. The motion passes unanimously. So now we will move into, let's see. That was a long consent calendar. Yeah.
So unfortunately, on 10.1.1,
10.1.1,
we are going to have to postpone that. The staff member and one of the students that were presenting were ill, so we will move that to May.
Very good. Okay.
I have an ER cutting for them, so.
It will get here just next month.
All righty. So then we'll move into 10.1.2, and this is an informational item from the Japan trip.
Yeah. So I'm going to introduce this young lady. She kind of bailed me out. I was in over my head for about a trip to Japan, and I came and spoke to her about things that I know that she has gone before. This teacher has gone before, and I wanted her to help me out with a collaboration between the two high schools, and she was able to do that for me and did it with a wonderful job, and I can't thank her enough. for doing that for me. And so I'd like to bring up Ms. Michelle Martin and Ms. Amy Baynard. I don't know if you're coming up too for, I don't know, but thank you very much.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So you have sound.
For the sound for the video?
Yeah.
Thanks. Oh, thanks. When I came to Chico 20 years ago for graduate school, I didn't ever think that I would become the Japanese teacher and teach over 700 kids Japanese and be able to share my love for Japan. And although this is the last year of our Japanese program at PVHS, I'm excited to say that this year we had 2 trips to Japan. One's in June for 3 weeks. The students are paying for that. And of course, you remember that these amazing, lovely, wonderful students had the opportunity to go to Japan for free. And that's something, even though it was mid-year when I talked to Jay about it and Kelly, it's something you just can't pass up for kids. March was really busy month for Amy and me. You probably know that we had 33 Ecuadorians at PV 4 days after we got back from Japan. And although normally the red and gold and the blue and white are fierce competitors, I have to say that I've really come to love these kids, and just seeing the kids work together and their friendships and how much they rely and trust on each other, I was so impressed with how bonded they became. Thanks to the Kakehashi program in Japan, we attended lectures on technology, cultural anthropology. We learned about protecting the coral reefs. We tried new foods and made many, many new friends. And in exchange for this amazing trip, I'm not showing you the pictures. In exchange for this amazing trip, the students have been asked to share about their experiences online and then in communities with different forums. I hope that their stories encourage you to support world language and student travel, because it really does make a difference for a lot of students. So the first student that I'd like to call up is Roland, and he's going to talk about one of his influences.
Hello, my name is Roland Ryder, and I will be talking about the historical perspectives that we had during the Kakehashi program. One of the many places that we went to was the Chibichirigama, which is one of the many shelter caves that the Okinawan people hid in during World War II. It is sad to say that 80 of the, I think, 96 people in the cave took their own lives due to the fact that they thought the American soldiers were devilish and evil, because that's what they were taught. And realizing that, it's important to know that as we improve our relationships between America and Japan, we should never forget what happened during World War II, and we should take those tragedies and turn them into lessons. That way we can prevent something like this from ever happening again. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julian Evers, and I'm here kind of just to talk about my experience with host families. When we When we first arrived with our host families, we were all a little bit nervous. Well, I mean, a lot of us don't actually speak Japanese, and a few of us kind of learned last minute we would be going on this trip. So we don't always know all of the customs of Japan, and we were really, really worried we were going to offend somebody, especially our host families, because we're staying there for a few days. But we really quickly found out that the people of Japan are really, really forgiving and very kind about these situations. We had nothing to worry about from our host families. Even the general population in Japan were more than willing to show a bunch of crazy foreigners what to do. It was really heartwarming to see. I can honestly say that the host family visit was my favorite part of the trip, because I met some incredible people that I would never have met any other way. I met my host mother, Hanahiga. She's 73, and she is one of the strongest, most amazing women I've ever met. She took in like 4 of us for several days with her and her son, Saiho. He's like 40-something, but he's awesome too. But it was just a very inspiring experience to meet these people, because they showed us their way, their general day-to-day life. And I mean, I've never had a Spam bitter melon and tofu omelet before this, but I can say it was good because I met these people. And they just taught us about their culture. They taught us about their foods. Saiho taught us to play a sanshin, which is a very Okinawa-specific instrument that I would have never seen or heard before that. And it was just interesting. I'm an artist by trade. I'm graduating and trying to go to an art school soon. But everything about this trip inspired me. And I don't think I'll ever have an experience like it again. I mean, they were incredible people. They taught me so much. I learned so much on this trip that I'll take away and just continue to learn from and experience for the rest of my life. And for that, I am extremely thankful. Thank you.
So I was a bit of a lucky special in the group. I went for a run one of the mornings because I'm a runner, and I slipped on this concrete and I tore my PCL to the point where I couldn't really walk. So the rest of the trip, me and Ethan over here, we were crutch buddies, got around everywhere in our crutches. But through that negative experience, I got the positive of having the unique experience of visiting a Japanese hospital. One thing you need to know about me is I really am not a big fan about going to the hospital. It's something about like they sanitize the air, so like it has this weird smell to it. I feel like it's really slow and stuff. I'll start off talking about how after my trip in Japan, when I got back, my visit to the hospital. So in America, I meet with an orthopedic, and then with an appointment, it takes about an hour just to get to the waiting room. And then once I'm in the waiting room, it takes like another 30 minutes just to see the doctor. And then they give me an x-ray for like $50, and then an MRI, which was like 7 days later. I had to go to a different building to get an MRI, which was like $500. And then I waited another 7 days just to see the results. So as you can see, that's not the most amazing service. But in Japan, it was a whole different situation. I rolled into the place without even an appointment. I was worried I was going to miss the whole trip pretty much, the whole day. Our group was all visiting caves and stuff, but so I was worried I was going to miss out on all that. But I roll without an appointment. It only takes 30 minutes to see a doctor after arriving. And the service was really good. They had a translator go with me so I could understand what they're saying and I know what's wrong. Before they give you they do anything to you, they make sure you're okay with the price before they give it to you. So my x-ray also, the prices are also way lower. It was only $10 for an x-ray and $30 compared to the $500 for an MRI. It's pretty amazing. And it was all within the same trip too, so I knew right away the results. And the results were the same as when I got back home. And then in the waiting experience, I actually had a really a pretty good talk with one of the JICE officials, one of the Asian officials in the program. She was really gracious and stuff. But I watched a YouTube video before my trip, and it was this video about this thing called cuddle cafes, and they made it sound like cuddle cafes were everywhere. And I thought this is strange. So then I told her I was like, have you ever gone to a cuddle cafe? And she just hysterically started cracking up. And she thought I was a dumb American. But it was a good experience for me to have because I got to see how social media kind of separates these two worlds. And I saw how much in common we really do have. So much so we could both crack up about the idea of cuddle cafes. But I just really I especially want to shout out Mrs. Michelle. Mrs. Martin. I want to shout out Mrs. Martin because she totally just had my back throughout the whole experience. She totally made sure I was okay. Even I got emotional at times when she rubbed my back. I'm just so happy I had her there for me. It was an amazing experience. I'm so glad I had it. So now I'm going to show you. That's a picture of all of us. The lady kind of in the middle to the right side, that's the lady I had to talk with about cuddle cafes. Okay, and then this next video is a video that one of our students here made, Sean. He is a really good editor and video photographer and stuff. So I'll start it. Here, let me make sure the volume's up. And then, I bet I could. Where's this volume?
Let's just play our video.
Let's do it.
Okay, that's not good.
say thank you very much for letting us going, and I think all the kids had a really positive experience. So, thanks.
Michelle, you've been a leader in this area for a really long time and tremendous impact, and I'm really glad you guys got to do it. Are you still running?
Sadly, no. I think my season's kind of over at this point, but
Okay.
I'm looking forward to college.
All right. They warned us not to let anybody like you get on that plane. You know that? They said no medical issues. But you guys got a great experience, and that's really tremendous. So wonderful.
Oh, yeah, I just wondered, in the video at the very end, what was that? Was that some part of a ceremony? What was going on there? Can someone explain that?
So on the last day that we were in, I don't know if this is on, the last day that we were in Japan, we went to Narita, which is a city kind of near Tokyo, and we went to a Buddhist temple there. And in there, in the temple there is a massive pyre, I guess, and you could put in incense that supposed to bring you good fortune, beauty, and I also bought this little charm from the Buddhist monks that were in there, and it promotes safe travels. And I'd like to say that does work because I'm not dead yet. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for coming and sharing your experience with us.
And at this point, we'll let all of our students go ahead and go. And other people that don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, now would be a good time.
So let's move on to item 10.1.3, which is another informational item. Tina Keene will give us some information on grant and resource development.
Hi there, good evening, thank you. Again, my name is Tina Keene. I have been in this position almost 6 months now, and many people have asked me, are you liking the new job? How's it going? What's different? A lot of it is about the people I work with. That is not different, but it's very similar from my ed services team to the people I work with every day, one of which is here with me, Liz Metzger. One of the jobs that I oversee, that I've come to learn about and I continue to learn more about, are the grants that Chico Unified has received. It was a big learning curve on my part, because sadly I didn't realize the depth of all of the grants K-12. And it has thoroughly shocked and stunned me. I think I've referenced it before in meetings. But I get to work with Liz every day. I have grown to really appreciate her. She is patient with my questions. She is very knowledgeable. And when I was trying to wrap my head around all of these grants that I hear in ed services and here and there, and I said, Liz, help me understand the timelines of these, what grades they cover, what curricular areas they cover. And she said, okay, Tina, I got it. And she listened, and she came up with a beautiful piece of paper that is so much more to me. It's my guide. It's what you've seen. And I said, Liz, that's fantastic. She shared it with Kelly, and Kelly said, this is fantastic, because Kelly probably thought like I did. She's got more on her brain than I do. So to have Liz's brain translated onto paper has just been wonderful. And I can't thank her enough for that. So Kelly asked us if we wouldn't, if Liz wouldn't mind giving a brief overview of where Chico Unified is in our grant world right now. And I'm really pleased to introduce Liz, and we also have some guests with her to talk briefly that are part of a grant that we are part of, which is the Classified Credentialing Grant, a combination teamwork effort between Chico Unified and Cal State Chico. So Liz Metzger.
Well, I don't know how great my brain really is, because the agenda cover references 2 different types of grants that we have and charts that will explain both of those. One is categorical grants, which are formula grants that we get based on the number of English learners we have or number of special ed students. And that's sort of an ongoing, it's something we can expect and count on more or less, although it does change. And the second is competitive grants, and those are the ones that we apply for. That's the chart you have. The categorical ones I forgot to put in your packet, so I've got copies of those for you here. Okay, that'd be great. And as kind of a special bonus for forgetting, I also gave you a list of grants that are pending right now, the ones we're waiting to hear about and we hope to hear about in the next couple months. So basically, after giving you these charts, they're relatively self-explanatory. There's not a lot that I can say, but I thought it was amazing tonight to listen to the students from McManus and listen to the students from Pleasant Valley, because I really got an insight into what was going on in those specific classrooms that let me generalize then about other programs across the district. So coincidentally, it's happened that we have these guests here tonight to give us an in-depth look at one grant in particular, just to see the kind of impact that it's making. So this is going to demonstrate a collaboration between Chico State and Chico Unified. And it's also just showing how we were able to tap into a funding source to address a problem of teacher shortages on a local level. So I'd like to introduce Andrew Nichols from Chico State and Virginia Thomas Melly, who's a credential candidate in the program right now.
No slides? Okay. No, you didn't. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out if I have a PowerPoint. Hello, I am Andrew Nichols, the credential advisor for the School of Education at Chico State. So since this classified personnel grant began, I have been the point of contact, more or less, with Chico State for advising the individuals working through Chico Unified who were selected for the grant and advising them on their path to obtaining their credential, which is what Virginia is here to talk about. I don't know if this is in your packets, but there were 2 different rounds of selection for this grant. So they got a renewal for a second round. Each round was for 25 grant recipients. So far, we have had 8 individuals complete the credential program and earn their credentials through Chico State using this grant funding. One of them was for education specialist mild to moderate, one multiple subject, and education specialist mild moderate. They get both credentials at the same time. 2 single subject, one of whom also earned a bilingual authorization, and 4 multiple subject candidates. So those people have already finished. Hopefully they're teaching in Chico Unified. We have 11 more currently in the credential program, 5 of whom are going to be finishing their credentials this May. Again, most of them are special education. Where'd you go? Does the packet say, I don't know, sorry, I didn't see your packets. The grant is specifically for special education, bilingual education, math, science, and English. So those are the areas that we're looking for. 3 more potentially will be starting a credential program this fall, and then we have another 31 currently in the pipeline. They're kind of all over the place. Some are working on their bachelor's degrees still. Some are just working on prerequisites and exam requirements for admission to the credential program. If any of you remember exams, those are always fun. They tend to take people some time to get through. But all in all, considering how short of a time this grant has been operating, we're doing a fairly good job of cranking these students through and getting the credentials so that they can fill your high need areas. Sound good? Good. Virginia?
So I'm Virginia Thomas Melly. I started working in Chico Unified School District in the 2016-2017 school year. I worked at Loma Vista Preschool for 2 years I worked with Sarah Valim, who's an amazing teacher who kind of nudged me along. And then when the grant opportunity came up, she said, oh, you have to try it. You have to go for it. You really should be a teacher. I was a paraprofessional working as the integrated playgroup specialist or leader. Integrated playgroups are an evidence-based practice. They were designed for students with autism, but they are appropriate for any type of student. Loma has that special program that is the bridge between Loma Vista and Innovative, which is a nonprofit private pay preschool. So we would take some students from Innovative along with some students from Loma Vista who wouldn't otherwise have inclusion. They'd come to my classroom to do play-based learning. I can't say enough good things about Loma Vista. The climate there is wonderful. Erin Sawburn is an amazing principal. Gina Payton is an amazing vice principal. And the teacher that I worked with, Sarah Valim, is an amazing teacher. And I can't thank Chico Unified enough because that grant helped me get through a year, and so 2 semesters and 2 summer semesters of pre-credential prerequisites to get into the credential program. I am now almost all the way through my first year of the credential program as a teaching intern. I'm in the education specialist mild to moderate pathway, and I'm working at Hamilton Elementary School. It's a great program there, but I do miss working for Chico Unified, and my hope is to continue to fulfill my teaching intern requirement at Hamilton Elementary School with the intention to someday hopefully return to Chico Unified. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much for creating this bridge between Chico Unified and Chico State, because it was wonderful working with Andrew. He made it very, very easy to get through the prerequisite program, held my hand kind of through the requirements, and reassured me when I had a million questions about what classes I needed to take and in what sequence and the exams and all of that. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia, and thank you both for giving some input into tonight's grant topic here. One thing I do want to make mention, it's hard to see up here, the board has this, but for the audience, between 2015 and today, there have been and are over $36 million worth of grant-funded programs coming into Chico Unified, with more on the table. So it's pretty exciting. We're very, very grateful, and we'd like to keep it rolling. Liz?
So, on behalf of the board, I would like to present Liz Metzger with the Chico Unified Board Award for bringing in $66+ million to Chico Unified.
Yes.
Come on. We didn't know there was $66 million out there to get either.
Liz, I have called you our golden girl for a long time, but 66 million, that's pretty staggering.
I have to say it's not all me. Other people write grants in the district, quite a few others. Shannon Payne, I don't know what I'm going to do now that she's a principal, darn it, because she was helping a lot with a lot of it. But thank you. Appreciate it.
All righty, thank you. So we will move on to business services, and the next item of business is 10.2.1, informational item regarding the campfire insurance claims settlement. Mr. Baltima.
Immediately after the campfire, our schools were certainly impacted, mostly with smoke. At the time, we assessed the estimated costs to have it professionally cleaned across the entire district, and we were told it was somewhere over $10 million. So we worked closely with our insurance group. We did testing in all of our classrooms. We are providing you a detailed report of the expenditures by school. Most of the expenditures you see are related to that testing that frankly occurred, but this also captures any cleaning costs above that. You will note there were some classrooms that we went in and schools that we had professionally cleaned. We also do have some computers that were replaced. But this represents $380,000 of insurance claim that has in fact been reimbursed. The only dollars that we are out at this point in time is the $10,000 deductible. To inform the board, we are working with FEMA, and we believe that $10,000 will be reimbursed through the FEMA process, plus additional costs of some of our managers, extra time, overtime, and a lot of the vehicles that we used during the campfire response as well. So I'm pleased that our insurance definitely stepped up, paid us very quickly. We're very responsive to our needs. We feel that the classrooms were cleaned thoroughly and available for students at the nearest point. And just want to inform the board and the public that those expenditures which we incur have in fact already been reimbursed from our insurance.
Very good. Dr. Kaiser.
So we have also had quite a bit of damage from the flooding that happened. Chico Junior particularly impacted. I know teachers who have been horribly impacted, and insurance didn't cover a lot of it because, quote unquote, they weren't in a flood zone. So I'm just wondering, this is wonderful work, but I'm wondering, is there any framework in which we think we can recoup some of those losses?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've opened up a separate claim.
Okay.
Rocio in my office has done an excellent job working with insurance. We're keeping track on a list of those, and we will be filing that claim as well. My guess is that we'll hit our deductible and we'll be out the $10,000, but certainly any costs over and above that, I our insurance will work closely with us and reimburse us.
Well, I know we lost a lot of books and stuff. Do we have even a ballpark idea of what we lost money-wise?
We're still doing an inventory on that.
Okay.
You're correct. We lost books, some Chromebooks as well.
Yeah.
And so we're keeping track of that, along with the landscaping and
Oh, yeah.
everything else that was damaged.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Alrighty, so let's move into the next item, which is actually discussion action item 10.2.2, and this is the Charter Schools Measure K project request. And I don't see Ms. Kissel, so Mr. Weisenborn.
Hello,
Hi
how
there.
have you been? It's been a while.
Yep.
And before I get started on this particular item, I did want to take just a minute to talk about how proud I am driving around town and looking at things that have been happening and things that have happened in the past. But there's nothing that I am prouder of than the team out in facility, Julie Kissel and her team of people. And there's nothing that I have more fun doing lately than going to one of their ribbon cuttings and seeing what they've gotten done and just being totally amazed and blown out and happy that it's continuing along the way so well. And the last one at Loma Vista was just amazing. And anybody that hasn't seen it yet, you need to get out there and see it. But Julie's been covering for me while she's been here and taken on these tasks, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to discuss with you tonight the Measure K project request that we're bringing forward. I want to talk about what that project is, where it's at, who all is involved in it, how it's coming along. I want to talk about next steps. I also want to talk about work that I've done with Kevin on talking about spanning allocations, round one, round two, as a method of keeping this project moving on in a timely fashion. One of the things that you had authorized in the Measure K request previously was bringing on ARC Alternatives, who we've worked with quite a bit before. Russell Driver, Simon, who came on board and did a feasibility analysis on the Core Butte Notre Dame campus. And it's an interesting task for them. One of the things that it involves is kind of separating out two existing entities. And both of those entities are very interested in moving ahead with a solar project at this point in time. So with the benefit of their feasibility analysis, we put together an RFP. The RFP was circulated out within the community, got 2 responses. The results of those responses were included in your packet along with the recommendation from ARC Alternatives on who would be the most productive to be working with, who would be the most cost effective, and that is Climate and Energy Solutions was the team that was head and heels above the other as far as cost, and they actually are doing the project for the neighborhood church. So given the Measure K constraints and criteria of needing to have something that can be picked up and moved, we also wanted to be sure that we were separating the project that would be put in place benefiting the neighborhood church and the Core Butte campus. And that Core Butte, part of the project is going to be actually splitting apart the delivery of the PG&E services so that it's very clear to everybody that the Measure K dollars are not going to benefit the neighborhood church in this case, and that we're able to pick up all of the panels and everything and move them to another location should we need to do that. That process is now at a point where, as far as next steps, at the next regular board meeting, we're going to be coming back to hold a public hearing similar to what we did for the first set of solar projects at PV Chico High, Chapman, the courtyard, and this, again, for the second set of projects out at the elementary sites that works with the government code that allows a public entity to enter into an energy contract that doesn't require going with the lowest responsive bidder, which in this case it happens to be the lowest responsive bidder, but also the firm that will be, we believe, the most productive. So next month we'll be bringing in the resolution, we'll be bringing in a detailed analysis of the savings and the cost to be incurred, and we'll also be coming in with a contract for the district to enter into with climate and energy systems on behalf of Core Butte. What we're looking for tonight is an allocation of the Measure K funds that have been set aside to Core Butte and an authorization that we can move ahead with that process. Now comes the part about spanning the two different rounds, round one allocation and round two allocations. Kevin's moving ahead with the second sale of bonds, and it's more work on the agenda tonight, I believe. So in the project request, there is an allocation number that looks pretty official and pretty solid, but is simply a projection of the ballpark range of what will be allocated to Core Butte, dependent upon what the actual bond sale proceeds are and dependent upon actions to be taken by Measure K. So I just want to make sure that while we've been tracking numbers through from the first round allocation and updating spreadsheets, that the fact that there is a number in the second round allocated to Core Butte, that's a projection, that's a target, that's not something where we've jumped ahead to assume anything, but that will be established. So in the work process, what will start out on the solar project is an initial round of design and development of that design, approval of the design, making sure that it gets approved by the city of Chico and by PG&E, and that's going to cost some money, and procuring the panels will cost some money, and that's what we're looking at with the phase one allocations. As that work then, the objective is to be able to put this in over the summer so that we hit not only the safest time to be working on the school campus, but also have that system up and running at peak production in September, August, and be able to start seeing the benefits for the campus of the energy being produced. So those bills would be coming in July, August, due payable August, September, which we believe is going to be once the bond proceeds are in place and ready to keep moving. And the benefit of taking this approach is that it helps us move the project without having to go do outside financing or looking toward the district to be funding anything ahead of that bond proceed. It's recognizing that this is a valid application of funds that will be allocated and will be in place. It's kind of the approach that we've been trying to represent here. Other than that, I'm open for questions, ready to talk about it, answer anything.
Yeah, I had a few questions. How much savings are they hoping to have with this project?
The full analysis will come at the next meeting with the report, but I do think that there is a life cycle net benefit that is reported back on page 2 of 3 in Simon's recommendation to Core Butte that indicates $1 million, $1,053,736, based on the assumption that was done on the proposed proposals and the interviews. They're getting much more in depth with what that actual number is going to be, but that's their projection right now.
Okay, so if I recall with the other projects that we've done, these things have been, the cost has been spread out over 20, 30 years,
Yes.
right? And so I guess what my concern is that you have a project that has that long of a life. How do we know about this school and its existence for that period of time? And, you know, I mean, what if it is defunct within that time frame? Are we just then left with having to pay for this thing? And because obviously that's not our property that this is being put on. And I realize what you say, that this is, you know, somehow portable and can be moved, but is that really feasible to do something like that? You know, those are just...
That's a fair question. Let me break it into two questions, because we had to address that first question that you had every time that we brought a project to you about the solar project and solar savings. What happens if the PG&E rates actually drop? You know, what happens? The first couple of projects we were paying yearly for the energy that we were buying at a reduced rate through a power purchase agreement. Then the second set of projects was a capital investment that went out and paid the money and then got the savings over a period of time. So the question about how do you know what you're going to save in 25 or 30 years is one part of that question. The second part of the question becomes, how do we know the school's going to be there in 20 or 30 years? And frankly, we don't. And we can look back at their track record and see that this is one of the strongest charters there, but that what we've been kind of given as a parameter to work within is make sure that as much as, if we needed to, as much of that initial investment is recapturable through that process. And that's the particular systems that we've been looking at putting in place and spec'd actually are very portable. They're very, you can take those panels off. Unfortunately, we had that experience at Little Chico Creek a few years ago. But the systems are transportable and they are very adjustable. One of the problems that we're running into right now is that the federal government's got this tax incentive to put the systems in place. And the panels, the 380 watt panels are just, they're not making them fast enough to get them in everywhere that needs to be done. So we believe that given our task of trying to make this as portable or as movable as we can to address that question about what happens when the school's not there, that this is a pretty solid approach.
Because I've been involved in, you know, a grant-making organization where we would give funds to different groups, and, you know, the idea was that if they didn't use these items or at the end of their grant term, they would return them back. But there was nobody really designated as the person who was to go there and get this thing back. And so it never came back, you know, so even though that was the expectation. So I would hope that written into this somewhere is a plan that if this happens or that happens, that somebody knows we expect these things to come back to the district.
That's,
and there is a, you know, a plan, and it is written down somewhere that
sure,
that is going to happen.
That sounds like it could be handled with a memorandum of understanding between the district and the charter.
And I think Mr. Baltima has a comment?
Yes, one of the key differences in the example you just provided was that, frankly, the district will own this. I mean, that is the challenge that we've had with the Measure K dollars. In essence, they are the district's. These are our assets for the benefit use of the charter schools, which complies with the language that was in the bond measure, that 15.34% of the dollars would be available for the benefit of charter schools. But in this case, we would own it. It would be on their site, and we're working closely with them. But if Core Butte chose to move or something changed with that, it is our asset which that we would then pull back. And furthermore, this is more consistent to what we're doing with our own solar, where we're purchasing the systems than entering into power purchasing agreements. These are much more efficient ways of basically getting benefit of solar, we believe.
Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. Mike and Kevin both, I think I understood what you were talking about as far as the funding being split, and it's working because we're right at the precipice of Makiko and working with that sale. Am I understanding that correctly, that that's why this is working right now at this particular point?
Well, the charters are very good about maintaining their allocation within the bond series that has been sold. So they don't look at the entire bond program and say we have access to all those dollars, because they understand that we don't have all that cash. The reality is we're going to be selling the next series. That cash should be here this summer. But furthermore, there is cash still left within the bond measure that we can cover it either way. We appreciate the detail that the charter schools go through within their allocations, but we just need to simply make sure that they get the full benefit of the 15.34% in the timing in which the individual charter schools need their dollars. So we aren't specifically accounting for cash by their timing of the program, but in this case, it works anyway because we have the next series of sale occurring this summer.
That was the part that I missed tonight. I thought I read it in the backup materials, but thank you. That is what I thought I was understanding, or actually thought I was not understanding.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board?
I moved 10.2. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Is there questions from the audience? I'd like to just clarify what exactly the motion is that you would like. You want us to approve this particular request for Core Butte, the Measure K project? It just says Charter Schools Measure K project.
Yeah, for $637,330.
Okay. Go ahead and make your motion.
I move the passage of 10.2.2.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Dr. Kaiser, a second by Eileen Robinson. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Alrighty, next item is 10.2.3, and this is a discussion action item, adoption of resolution 1463-19, exemption of the construction of Emma Wilson School's new kindergarten project from the City of Chico's zoning ordinance. And again, I do not see Julie here. So.
I'm speaking to it. So this is a very typical practice for the school districts. We are getting ready to begin construction this summer on the Emma Wilson kindergarten program. We typically take advantage of the government code, which exempts us from certain ordinances within the city. I will say we do work closely with the city, and we have many conversations about our projects, but at the same time, knowing that we have this available to us with the timelines in which we need to meet for the construction to start school, we are asking the board to grant us this exemption per government code.
Questions from the board? No questions from the audience? Alrighty, may I have a
Okay,
motion?
I move this item.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Liz Griffin, a second by Dr. Kaiser. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 10.2.4. This is also discussion action item with another resolution declaring the futility of public bidding change order work on the Little Chico Creek Elementary School site work and relocation of one relocatable administration building project, and authorizing the superintendent to execute change order number 2R.1. Mr. Boltema.
Yes, so we're bringing forward a resolution that ultimately addresses the fact that we had a change order that was in excess of 10% of the construction project. And we note we have 6 reasons that we are asking the board to basically grant us the authority to not go through the bidding process. One of those is that we believe the rebidding work was necessitated by an alternative electrical delivery method that was not able to meet through the campfire. PG&E was not able to kind of do what was originally in the plans. The cost of the change order, we believe, is reasonable. It is actually fairly close to 10%. It is slightly over, but not dramatically over. A new contractor, if they were performing the work, would certainly, we think, cost more and create timeline issues for us. And that ultimately, if we bid out the project, we're not convinced that it would have changed that dramatically than the cost that ultimately we paid for the project. So with all of those things noted, we're asking the board to pass this resolution allowing for the proposed change order to go forward.
Questions? Nope. Questions from the audience? May I have a motion?
Yes, Madam President, I was going to move approval of the request to use the code to not put this out for bid, and I appreciated the significant backup reasoning for that, because once I read it, I realized that, yes, it did make more sense for the current contractor, with whom we have a great deal of past experience, positive past experience, and it did make more sense, both the issue of the maintenance and guarantees on the project remaining similar. So I wholeheartedly support it and move approval.
Okay, so may I just clarify, Ms. Robinson, that you are moving to approve resolution number 1467-19?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. May I have a second? Dr. Kaiser. We have a motion to approve by Eileen Robinson, a second by Dr. Kaiser. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving right along to 10.2.5. This is another resolution for the same situation. Mr. Boltema, if you can give us a little update on that.
Sure. This was the relocation of 2 portable classrooms that occurred at Hooker Oak Elementary School. Remember, we were on a tight timeline as well on those 2 projects to have those available over the winter break. Ultimately, the change order was approved in the amount of $32,000, or ultimately there's a change order for $31,848 related to dry rot damage that was found on those portables once we got them onto the site. So again, for almost the exact same reasons that we provided in the previous resolution, we believe that the change order was reasonable. Having the work done for the timeline issues was reasonable. We're asking the board to adopt this resolution, acknowledging that it was appropriate.
I move passage of this item.
Second.
All righty, so we have a motion to approve resolution 1468-19 by Liz Griffin, is that correct? And a second by Dr. Kaiser. Are there any questions from the board? Any further discussion? Audience? All righty, may I have a vote, please? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. All righty, so now we are moving on to 10.2.6, and this is an approval of agreement for bond counsel services, Measure K, Series B. Kevin?
So we're bringing this for the board for approval. We did use a different firm for Measure K Series A, but we were so happy with the services we received for our Series B Measure E from Jones Hall, and specifically working with Katie Dobson. We're bringing this to you for your approval in preparation for a sale of bonds, which we, again, if you pass the resolution, would occur this summer.
Any questions from our board?
So, Kevin, you expressed that we were very pleased with this, the last services that we received, and so based on that, you'd like to move forward with the same group.
That and also we feel that the firm has experience working directly with charter schools, which is one of the issues within our Measure K dollars, to make sure that those dollars are spent appropriately. So we feel that they have a level of expertise that would suit us well for the rest of our Measure K series.
I therefore move approval of this item.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the bond counsel services from Jones Hall by Liz Griffin. We have a second from Dr. Kaiser. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board or audience? All righty, may I have a vote, please? All those in favor? Aye. Aye, motion is approved. Thank you for working with us again. And let's move on to item 10.2.7. And this is the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of election of 2016 general obligation bonds, Series B, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $55 million, and approving related documents and actions. And Mr. Boltzma.
Just introduced, this is Makiko,
Yes.
our financial advisor, whom you know well, and Katie Dobson, who made the drive. You just approved her contract as well. So this is our team that's going to help us walk through the bond sale, make sure we get the best price for the taxpayers, and are following all the legal parameters thereof. So with that, I'll turn it over to
Yes.
Makiko.
Thank you.
You want PowerPoint or do you want? You got it. So we're switching the view here, just one moment. There we go.
Thank you so much. Good evening, board members, district staff.
If it's not showing up below, you do have paper copies, board, that we provided as well.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for putting up with another bond presentation. We wanted to talk through the structure of the Measure K Series B bonds as the district is preparing to issue the next series of bonds. Want to start out this program again, or this presentation again, by showing appreciation to your community, who have been very supportive of the district in terms of their bond measures. And I was actually surprised to see these support levels again. Measure K passed with 71% support, and Measure E with 65% support. And as you know, Chico Unified is a little unique in that we have two authorizations that we still have authorization remaining. So as you recall, the original plan was to alternate between these bond authorizations, and that was going to allow the district to meet its ongoing project needs and to implement the bond program responsibly. So the blue bars here represent, the blue rows represent the Measure K bonds, and the pink bar represent the Measure E bonds. And so as you can see, the Series A Measure K bonds were projected to be issued in 2017, and the Series B were expected to be issued in 2020. So in terms of structuring the Series A bonds, we were able to shorten the repayment term significantly, especially for the Series A-1 bonds. And that lowered the interest expense on the bonds significantly. And in fact, as a total on a combined basis, the Series A1 bonds had a repayment ratio of under 1.4 to 1. And as you can recall, the statutory maximum is 4 to 1. That's the total debt service that taxpayers pay over time versus principal. So the statutory maximum is 4 to 1. Your typical school district bond issuance is 2 to 1. And Chico was able to achieve 1.4 to 1, so the lower the better. And that was because, in large part, because we were able to repay principal in the first 3 years. And you see we're really close to our tax rate target there through 2020, with the expectation that the Series B would be issued in 2020, and we left capacity 2021 and on. So that was the concept behind the structure of the Series A bonds. And so since then, we've been working closely with the district to make sure that the bond program matches up with the project needs. And what we've been hearing from the district is a need to accelerate some of the bond issuances. The yellow on this slide highlights some of the changes from the initial plan. So Measure E, Series B, originally planned to be issued in 2019. We updated that to 2018, issued it 1 year sooner, and actually upsized the par amount from 20 million to 30 million. And now for Measure K Series B, instead of issuing in 2020, planning to issue it in 2019, so 1 year earlier than expected.
And if I could just jump in, as a reminder, when we did the assessment, the evaluation to the community of whether they would even support a bond, what we heard was they were willing to pay for it, but they wanted to see something for their money. So we have been working very diligently to spend those dollars as quickly as possible. One, to show that the taxpayers that we're building something, but two, we have escalation costs that are dramatic. So we think it's actually better the sooner we get these things in the ground and get them paid for.
Yep, and I'm gonna actually go back to the slide 5 again, and to emphasize that, one of our challenges is that 2020, we used up a lot of the capacity in 2020. And so by accelerating the issuance by a year, we need to figure out a solution to pay for interest expense for 2020. And so exploring financing options, especially with this 2020 constraint in mind, there's really 2 financing options that I think are relevant here. First is your traditional GO bond. It's a long-term financing, and we would need to have a deposit of market-driven premium into the debt service fund to offset the first year of interest. The other alternative that we thought about was a bond anticipation note. This is an interim financing, so it would have a short maturity of 1 to 2 years. And then you would issue the GO bond to take out the interim financing. But it would still may require a deposit of market-driven premium, so it wasn't really solving the issue that we had in 2020. And just kind of from a tabular perspective, this compares the traditional GO bonds versus the bond anticipation notes. So the traditional GO bonds is a long-term financing. Bond anticipation notes are an interim financing and are repaid from the proceeds of a long-term GO bond financing. The pros of a GO bond financing is that it's one financing. We don't need to do another financing to take it out. And you do need to take on, in a bond anticipation note, you would take on some interest rate risk for the takeout financing. What's good about the ban is that it does stay a little bit closer to the original financing plan. But overall, we thought it was pretty clear that the general obligation bond had an advantage. There's no need to pay 2 issuance costs and go through the process twice, take on interest risk, when there is a solution with the general obligation bonds. So I referenced the market-driven premium, and I wanted to get into that a little bit more because I know that is an issue that some of your community members have raised in the past. So slide 9 is a pretty technical slide. We talk about coupons and yields.
Excuse me, though, could I either have her sound turned up, or could you speak a little more loudly? Because
it's hard to hear.
I can't hear.
Okay.
There's some sort of fan going on over there.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So on slide 9, this is a technical idea, but there is, for a municipal bond, there are coupons and yields. Coupons determine how much an investor gets on a periodic basis in interest payments. Historically, coupons have been 5% in the municipal industry. And investors are not dynamic. They have been, dealing with 5% for a long time. And in fact, the municipal benchmark yield that we look at in every pricing assumes a 5% coupon. Because there is, 5% coupons are the baseline, it also provides investor liquidity so that, once they buy the district bond, if they want to sell it in the secondary market later, it gives, it has a little bit, it's easier to sell to another investor because it is the standard baseline. So however, because of certain tax law rules and state law rules, most California school districts do need to mix in some 4% coupons. So investors recently have gotten more comfortable with lower coupons. And interestingly enough, the 5% coupons, when you go back 10 years, weren't really an issue because yields were a lot higher. And this is an interesting issue that's become more significant recently because the borrowing rates on municipal bonds have been significantly lower. So I wanted to go into some of the detail on the table on the right-hand side and hone in on the 2021 maturity. And you can see that the coupon on that is a 4%, but the yield is a better indicator of the effective borrowing rate. So this is a scale that we got from your underwriter, Morgan Stanley, and they indicated that the 2021 maturity yield would be around 1.56%. So what's the benefit to the district is that since the coupon is higher than the yield, the investor is willing to give you more money up front. So if you were issuing $1 million in par amount in the 2021 year, you'd get $1,050,000. So they're willing to give you up front a little bit more money to compensate you for the fact that you're paying a higher coupon than the effective yield. So what do you do with that extra premium? You're actually, it would be great if you can use it for projects, but legally you're really restricted. You need a deposit into your debt service fund. And even with an entirely 4% coupon, you are generating a pretty significant amount of premium, around $2.5 million in premium that will get deposited into your debt service fund. This is all estimates based on current markets, but assuming the current market with a 4% coupon scale, you're still having about $2.5 million that gets deposited into your debt service fund. Which is interesting because we have the situation where we have excess premium, but you also have, it's actually a perfect fit because you also have a year in 2020 where you needed a deposit to the debt service fund to offset interest. So it actually works out very nicely for the district in that we have this excess premium and a need for that premium for the Series B bond issuance. So it solves the 2020 constraint issue. And we also want to note that we want to make sure that we want to have principal repayment in every single year. So although 2020 is a concern, we want to start repaying principal right away in 2021, and we're repaying principal every single year.
And I just want to jump in and make sure the board understands that this is the key issue that has been expressed through the Bond Oversight Committee of the generation of premium and the fact, what do we do with that? In other words, we're collecting more money or we're paying more money ultimately, right, to get these dollars available to us. So as Makiko said, it is market driven. It's the case that the market is driving this. We certainly do not want to sell at a discount where basically then the taxpayers are expecting $55 million of sale and we're getting something less than that. So the market's generating this premium. We're just following the law and putting it within the debt service. So I think the difference ultimately here is market driven versus we're somehow trying to manipulate the coupon rates to drive this piece. But as Makiko points out, this is an interesting time that it works in our favor, that we know this premium is going to be generated, but it helps us get through the 2020 year. So I just want the board to fully understand that's the conversation regarding premium that we want to make sure everybody understands.
Yeah,
And Makiko, do you feel like, oh, I'm sorry. Do you feel like that, there's been quite a bit of discussion of the flexibility in the up and down in the global market. You feel pretty sure, though, that we'll be able to sell these bonds?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're actually in a very strong interest rate environment with all the kind of, geopolitical news out there, Brexit, the tariff issues. There's been significant improvement in yields, lowering of yields this year. And actually, let me jump forward just as a reference here. This chart shows the MMD rates. That's the benchmark municipal yields. That's on slide 16. And you'll note that the benchmark yields reached a high of 2.77 for the 10-year rates right after the November election, actually, and 30-year rates went up to 3.46%. And this table has rates through February, but the latest figure on April 16, 2019, the 10-year yield went down to 1.94%, and the 30-year rates are down to 2.69%. So you'll note that, we've seen significantly, improving rates this year, which is, very different from what the expectations were, especially with the increases in rates through November. There was an expectation that that would continue. And, if you're reading the news, a lot of noise about the Fed raising their rates, which they've backed off of. All right, and then going back to slide 9, and I apologize because this is kind of a very technical issue, and I'm hoping that we're explaining this well enough. But I did want to mention that, in fact, this is all 4% coupon scale, and this is something that we requested Morgan Stanley to do specifically because of some of the concerns that have been voiced by your CBOC in the past, their recommendation would be to sprinkle in some 5% coupons. And that's because it gives investors a little bit of a choice and variety. You're limiting some of your investor base by having all 4% coupons. But their assessment is that there will be enough investors interested in Chico USD bonds that will be able to, hopefully, unless the market changes on us, achieve a fully sub-5 coupon scale. So I did want to mention that we are, actually asking Morgan Stanley to do something that's, a little different from the investor preferences, which is to lower the coupons as much as possible. All right, so on slide 10, it's pretty clear that our recommendation would be to move forward with the issuance of the Series B bonds. It's possible to issue the Series B bonds within the Measure K tax rate target, with the use of the market-driven premium to address that 2020 tax rate constraint. And there will be sufficient premium generated with an entirely 4% coupon scale. And the alternative of issuing bands doesn't really have a clear advantage. There would be 2 financing costs. You may still need to make this deposit to the debt service fund. It doesn't really, that's not our recommendation. And just graphically, on slide 11, this shows how the Series B bonds represented in kind of the darker blue, purplish color, there would layer on top of the existing Series A bonds and would stay within the tax rate target provided to voters at the time of the Measure K election. It would be all current interest bonds, have principal repayment in every year starting 2021, and we'd have the step down in 2023 or 2024 to allow for the Series C issuance for the remainder of the Measure K bonds. And then slide 13 is the financing timeline. I actually have a typo on here. We're requesting the board to consider the resolution authorizing the bond issuance tonight. That's April 17th. And then the rest of the schedule is accurate. That would allow us to price the bonds in mid-June and closing in early July. I think that's it.
Questions? No? Okay. Well, I'm glad that you brought up the capacity to sell the next series, because I was thinking about that, and are we going to get squeezed into a corner by doing this sale now? So we do have the capacity to go with the remaining Series C in 2021. I did have a question, though. You talked about the 4% coupons and then the 5% coupons. Are we feeling pretty strong to just go with the 4%?
Well, we are hoping that there will be enough investor interest at 4%, and Morgan Stanley has indicated that there should be.
Okay.
If we get strong feedback that, if the market changes and the investors are really needing a 5% coupon, we certainly don't want to pay off market rates to get the reduced coupons. So it's something that, conversation that we're going to have to continue to have with the underwriter, but currently the feedback is that the 4% coupons are doable.
Great, very good. Okay, any other questions from the board?
Katie Dobson is also here, so if you have any legal questions, you can certainly
come on
address
up, Katie. Yes.
Actually, I do have a question, thank you. Is there an opportunity when the sales go live? If we, because I got to watch it last time, and if we see that we're not getting the play we anticipated, is there a way of backing out at that moment and stopping the sale, or do we just go with, with what actually happens?
So what happens, and the reason that we work with a firm like Morgan Stanley is that they should have a market read as we get closer to pricing.
Yeah.
And so we have a pre-pricing call the day before the pricing to
that's
talk
right.
about the scale that we're going to be offering the bonds at to investors. And so if they indicate, based on their preliminary conversation with investors, that they're really getting strong pushback, that's the time we'll be able to have that conversation. I've never had to pull a bond sale on the morning of, so I'm hoping that never happens. We've had to make some significant adjustment at times, depending on, market environment. But
and do I remember correctly that during that process, there was an agreement that if things came up short, that they would buy and resell later, so that we are guaranteed, the sale at the level that they have, basically that phone call the day before guaranteed us. That's still part of the practice?
That's part of the negotiation. The underwriters typically don't want to step
Right.
in and purchase all of your bonds. But if there are some unsold balances and they feel that the yield is really representative of the market rates, they'll step in and underwrite some of the bonds.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now I feel better.
I moved, I'm sorry.
No problem. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for approving my contract first. And second, the resolution that you're considering, I just wanted to walk you through a couple of items in it. So Makiko laid out all the terms of the issuance. And so this resolution lays out the terms of the bonds, the method of sale, which is a negotiated sale to Morgan Stanley, and the security for the bonds, which is the ad valorem taxes collected in the district. And the thing I wanted to highlight for you is that there are a few documents that you're approving in their form in this resolution. And those documents are the bond purchase agreement, which is your contract with Morgan Stanley where they agree to buy all of the bonds. And it locks in, there are a lot of blanks you might notice in that document because that's where you put in the final pricing terms on that sale date. And then the very long document is the preliminary official statement. And that just, that's the document that's provided for investors, and it has information about the bonds, about the district's tax base, and about the district's finances. And so that will be provided to investors prior to the sale to generate interest in the bonds. And the last one is the continuing disclosure certificate, which is included as Exhibit E to the preliminary official statement. And that's where the district agrees to provide certain ongoing disclosure to the market after the bonds are sold. And the district is very familiar with this since you already have bonds that have been sold publicly. So you've engaged ISOM Advisors as your dissemination agent, and you have a completely clean compliance record right now. So I just wanted to draw your attention to those three documents since you're approving them in form. Thank you.
Now I think we're ready. Any questions, comments? Board, audience? Eileen?
Thank you, Madam President. Only a procedural matter. We have on our agenda 4 items. Do we only approve the resolution, or do the other documents have to be approved, and can we approve everything we need to approve all in one motion?
Good question. I
Yes,
think it's
you
just the
can.
resolution.
Just the resolution, and the other documents you're just approving in their form.
Okay,
yes.
then may I make a motion?
Please do.
I move approval of resolution number 1466.19.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Eileen Robinson, a second by Dr. Kaiser. May I have a vote, please? All those in favor? Aye. Aye, we have a unanimous approval. Thank you. Good luck. Gonna get her done. Yes, have a safe drive home. All righty, thank you. We will move on to 10.3.1, which is informational, and it is the presentation of the proposed 2021-22 student calendar. And this is Mr. Hanlon.
Okay, thank you. So each spring we bring to you the calendar for 3 years out. This allows for planning for both our school sites and our families. So I had sent or included an attachment, a copy of the proposed 2021-22 calendar. We opened it up for input with our unions, and the preference was stated that we put it on our website like we have done historically and let people individually comment. As promised, so I would share a quick summary of that, but we had 84 responses from community and employees. Most of the responses were they were fine with the calendar as is. There's a couple of things that there were concerns with 14 people, the start date, as usual. Some thought that it was too early. We also had the Easter break versus the St. Patrick's-based spring break, which we typically have comments. We had 10 comments that prefer the spring break around the Easter holiday. And then lastly, the other issue was the President's holidays. 3-day weekends versus 1 4-day weekend. So basically, I'm bringing it to the board to see if there's preferences in any of those, and then I'll bring back those changes once I hear input from the board. And if there's any others that you come up with yourselves that you have preferences in. Questions?
Thank you, Madam President and Mr. Hanlon. I can't find it on here. That we have usually there's a count, the number of days in the first semester versus second semester at the secondary level.
Yeah, good question. That's on the bottom right. So in this model here, the first semester has 82 days. The second semester has 98, and that's currently what we have. That's consistent with previous years.
Yeah, when I examined this, I was very pleased that everything kind of fell into place with this representation, and I especially like the fact that there were more days off before the winter break, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. In the last number of years, it's been terrible. We've
Just
had,
kind of the quirk in the calendar where the days fall, and this one happened to fall nicely.
That was what I noticed, and I do continue to support, and it is happening to an extreme this year, the spring break being in conjunction with the university and the March 17th, St. Patrick's Day difficulties that we have had. And given that we've had this pattern for a significant period of time, our families should be expecting it. And I do recognize that the actual spring break connected with the Easter holidays, we do have the travel day on Good Friday and the day after Easter to accommodate families that do travel because of that significance in their families for whatever, that their family gatherings are around the actual holidays. So I do believe we have accommodated all of the things that, that have caused problems in the past. The number of days, the 82 versus 98, while it is a bit of an imbalance, it's made up by the being able to have finals before the winter break. That still seems to be just academically really positive.
Yeah, they can have finals before the winter break instead of come back and then review, and it feels like a lot of wasted instructional time.
Yeah, I think you did a good job, because every year we go through this whenever it has to happen, and there's so many different things to juggle and so many things to take into consideration. And, we finally got it all kind of dialed in, just like Eileen said. So I think that's really a good thing. I was happy to see it.
Well, on that note, actually, I hear you got some feedback about the start date. Was that a sticking point for a lot of people?
It was, out of 84 responses, it wasn't so much that it was early, my notes here, it was that they prefer to have a Wednesday or Thursday start date rather than a Monday. And the only way to do that is to push it back, and then that pushes the last day of school back. And traditionally, we've had graduation on Thursdays, and then for the high schools, and then the junior highs on Fridays. So if we push that back, we kind of mess with graduation dates, which is a problem.
I'm interested in the 3-day, 3 weekends versus, I guess we had a 4-day and then, less.
Right.
Any feedback about that? It makes sense to me.
So the ones that came in preferred the 4-day. I just randomly, arbitrarily put in the 3-day, so that's easily changed. It's just flipping days. The date that it would be in question is Lincoln's birthday. It's an observed holiday anyway, because this year it falls on a weekend. So it's observed on the 14th, but we could move it to the 18th and have a 4-day weekend versus 2 3-day weekends.
I just wondered if you got.
Yeah, the feedback is not strong either way, but it's generally, from the notes I have here, generally like the longer 4-day weekend.
I don't have an objection to that change.
I think, yeah, it is. It's really kind of flip the coin. So I can bring it back that way if you prefer.
Yeah, I think I'd like you to bring it back with the 4-day.
Okay.
And we'll just see. Maybe solicit some more feedback from teachers and
Okay.
parents.
Okay, I can ask that question
Thank you.
specifically and see if it comes out more. Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments from the board, from the audience? All right, thank you, Mr. Hanlon. We will move on to 10.3.2. This is a discussion action item, and it's a resolution 1464. Mr. Hanlon again.
Okay. So, let me just write my notes here. So, on a regular basis, we bring positions to the board to eliminate. In this case, we have, I see 5 classified positions. Either they were for lack of work or lack of funds. One of them is grant funded, one of them is categorical funded, the others are lack of work. So all of these positions are, no one's being laid off. I know that's a concern, and so they're vacant at this time. And as typical, we talk with the union before we eliminate these positions. So we've had those conversations, and it's understood. We add some positions and we take others away, and it kind of keeps the flow going as far as effectively and efficiently using our resources. So I bring this resolution to you to eliminate those positions.
Anyone have questions? Comments? Board? Audience? Eileen?
I just have a question, and I'm sorry I didn't notice this ahead of time. On the cafeteria satellite manager, what was the location? Is that one of our charter?
Gosh, I couldn't tell you. I can get that information and email it to you if that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
Yeah. It looks as though it must be
It's
connected.
15 minutes, 0.1250 of an hour, so it looks like an adjustment of some kind.
If it's a, yeah, either it's a charter, I have a feeling that there was a McManus 15 minutes that floated around for a long period of time. So I would like to know,
Okay.
just out of curiosity.
Okay.
With that
I
said,
move 10.3.2.
Second. Alrighty, so we have a motion by Dr. Kaiser, a second by Liz Griffin to approve resolution number 1464-19. Any further discussion? Alrighty, all those in favor? Aye. Aye, it's passed unanimously. Thank you so much. We will move on to 10.4.1, which is an informational item. It is the first reading of revised or updated or new board policies. Kelly Staley.
Yes, we have 2 board policies that we're bringing forward for a first reading. Our past practice has been to go ahead and allow you the opportunity to read through those, allow the community to read through those, and then bring them back and answer any questions at our second reading, but we're certainly happy to answer questions tonight as well.
So is our second reading, do we know the date that that's going to happen?
It would be at our May 1st board workshop.
May 1st? Okay, so I would recommend that we do as we have done in the past, and if people have any language changes that they are suggesting, that they think about that and prepare that ahead of time and share that with the superintendent so we can all know what that would be and think about that a little bit before the meeting. And if the meeting is on May 1st, when does Erica need to prepare the agenda?
Well, the agenda would come, she would need the information the Wednesday prior.
The Wednesday prior. So do we have that date on somebody's calendar so we can make sure that everybody knows when the deadline is to get that information in?
And we can send out a reminder as well.
So it looks like the April 24th? The next Wednesday. Okay. So if people could do that, if you could strive to get your comments in by then. It's only 2 items. I know one is kind of, well, they're both kind of lengthy, but that would be great so that we could all find out. These are really interesting policies, and I think they do require quite a bit of thought. So I think that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Great idea. All right. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Alrighty, then we will move to item 11, and this is items from the floor. Again, if anyone has anything to address with the board, now's your time. And seeing none, announcements? Anyone? Well, then it's time for adjournment. Thank you so much.